Hello, everyone. Let's talk about why Gibbons would beat every other primate in a fight. This information is completely unbiased and is always true forever. Always. So, that thing is a gibbon. And yes, it's the thing that will be destroying every other primate in a fight. But how? Well, I've set up this phylogenetic tree. It's more like a stick, but that and a cladogram would be really, really hard to make a pun for. So we made the, well, we'll get to the pun in a second. But first, let's talk about our contestants. We got the ring-tailed lemur representing the strepsirrhines, goodness. A tarsier representing the tarsiers, a capuchin monkey representing the platyrrhines, mandrills for the cercopithecoids, and the pilotic gibbon for the hylobatids. For the great apes, we have the western lowland gorilla, also known as gorilla, the eastern chimpanzee representing Pan, and the Bornean orangutan representing Pongo. For humans, I found this dude. So, now let's get to the actual pun. Now we have the phytogenetic tree, even though it's more of a phytogenetic stick. But, either way, we have round one against lemurs. So let's talk about the actual difference between the lemurs and gibbons. Gibbons are arboreal swingers, whereas lemurs are arboreal leapers. Gibbons are considerably heavier and have long arms instead of long legs. Lemurs are primarily insectivores, whereas gibbons are, fruit eaters. And gibbons have their hands, they're grippers, while these lemurs have a little something called a grooming claw. And that grooming claw is very important. Or is it? Because what is a grooming claw used for? Is it A, grooming, B, cleaning other lemurs, also known as grooming? Or is it C, not used for fighting, or D, all of the above? It's D. This thing is basically useless in a fight. So when the thing is going up against a gibbon, yeah, it's not pretty. The winner's the gibbon. Moving on to round two against tarsiers. What actually changes between lemurs and tarsiers? First of all, they get a dry nose and they fuse their upper lip, so they're not more like a human than, say, a cat or a dog. And they also lose their tapetum lucidum, which helps them see in the night. Tarsiers, however, get around this by having gigantic eyes. Yeah, not creepy in the slightest. Now for the part all of you care about. Round two, gibbons versus lemurs. Wait a minute, that's a tarsier. Never mind. You'll notice that there's not a whole lot of difference between lemurs and tarsiers, except for the fact that they are very, very small and that they are nocturnal. And since gibbons are diurnal, this leads to a really big problem. That if they would fight, one of them would be asleep at the time. So, in order to really determine who would win a fight that way, we have to figure out who would be more equipped to beat them quickly. And gibbons have a size and weight advantage, so yeah, winner's the gibbon. Moving on to round three, we have the New World monkeys, also called the platyrrhines, represented by the capuchin monkey. What actually changes? Well, they have a fused mandible, which means their mandible, or their jaw, is one bone. They have a unicornuate uterus, which means that they can only make one baby. They also have a single pair of nipples, and their postorbital bar closes. Mostly what that means is that you can't poke something from its eye from behind its eye. That's not super important, but it will help quite a lot. It's also a good defense measure. And this is going from tarsiers to platyrrhines, also known as and going more specifically from haplorhines to anthropoids. Everything from this point onward is an anthropoid, even though it will get more specific. But now for the part you care about. Gibbons versus platyrrhines. So the big deal is that these platyrrhines are known tool users. They are known to use rocks, mostly just rocks actually, but they're capable of moving through trees a lot better and have been seen using tools, which, even though a gibbon has a size and weight advantage, that doesn't do anything if it can just get stabbed, and gibbons can't use rocks, right? Wrong. They use more sophisticated tools than that, according to this study by Claire Cunningham from the Department of Psychology at the University of Stirling. These gibbons were seen using rakes, other sophisticated objects, on top of using rocks, which suggests that they are able to use sophisticated tools. So theoretically, that AI-generated image that you see right there is possible. And I don't know about you, but I don't think a capuchin monkey with a rock is going to beat a gibbon with a gun, top hat, aviators, and a pipe. And so, with this theoretically possible change, yeah, kaboom. Winner, gibbon. Moving on to round 4, we have the cercopithecoids, represented by the mandrill. What actually changes? Well, their nostrils are facing downwards instead of outwards like the platyrrhines. They also have 2 premolars, whereas most, I'm fairly certain all of these platyrrhines have 3. And they have ischiocolosities, which are butt pads, which means that everything before this was not caked up and everything afterwards is. And it goes from platyrrhines to cercopithecoids, or rather from anthropoids to catarrhines. Make sense? No? Good. Round 4. So the big deal now is that these mandrills are very, very big. They have 40 to 80 pounds. They're at minimum twice the weight of a gibbon. And they have equal length limbs and are mostly quadrupeds and have a really broad diet, though they mostly eat fruit, just like a gibbon. Another big thing is that they have a very big numbers advantage, which gibbons don't have. Thankfully, this is a one-on-one fight. But even then, gibbons are way smaller, they have a smaller diet. It doesn't seem that great, right? However, so mandrills technically do have the ability to climb into trees, but they have nowhere near the proficiency as gibbons. And if they can't reach the gibbon and the gibbon can reach them, boom. Winner, the gibbon. Now moving on to round 5, we actually have a mirror match. But let's talk about the changes between gibbons and mandrills first. Gibbons have a much larger brain size and a larger chest cavity, or a thorax. They also have considerably longer arms from this point onward, and they have slow development, and that usually entails a longer life. That's not necessarily important in a fight, because, yeah. And they also lose the tail, which they don't need. You'll see here in a minute. And it goes from cercopithecoids to hylobatids, or from catarrhines to hominoids. Now let's go to the part that you actually care about. This is a full-on mirror match. That's right. No items, gibbons only, final destination. So, these gentle and very modern apes have long gone past the ability to fight. They have no need for it. These are thinkers. They've figured out the perfect way to win this fight, and it's a battle of the self. And the gibbons have figured out a way to win. It's beautiful. If you don't think it's beautiful, there's something very, very wrong with you. Winner, the gibbon. Now, going on to round 6 against the great apes. So what actually makes these gibbons different from the great apes? The great apes are distinct by having more recently evolved, so they've been around for not quite as long. So the gibbon is technically, you could consider the gibbon their ancestor, or that's not how it actually works, but still. And they also have better cognitive skills, which means bigger brains, wrinklier brains, and they can do things like recognize themselves in the mirrors and listen and communicate with other humans. I don't see why this is important, because I don't recognize myself in the mirror on some days, but I guess that's important. Round 6, Part 1, versus Pongo, represented by the Bornean orangutan. So these are both arboreal swingers. The orangutans have a very, very huge weight advantage, but also have mostly everything else. So they actually aren't all that different, all things considered. Orangutans are much larger and fulfill the same niche. They just don't live in the same parts of the world. So by all reasonable logic, the gibbon loses. So how does a gibbon win? Well, there's the story of David and Goliath, where the small dude has a sling and he just throws the rock at Goliath. Goliath goes down in one hit. It's beautiful. So, theoretically, moving on to this next round against gorillas. Gorillas are terrestrial knuckle walkers. They are by far the largest primates, and they also have long arms, broad diets, though they mostly eat fruits and leaves. They're equipped to eat leaves because sometimes they can get into fights with chimpanzees over who gets the fruit. So, yeah. And they are also known to live in small groups, which is much larger than gibbons who live in pairs. You should know all this stuff about gibbons by now. So much like mandrills, gorillas have the ability to climb in trees, but they have very little mobility, and they really can't reach the gibbon. So, just look at this. Yeah, I don't think the gorilla stands a chance. So, yeah. Moving on to part 3, with genus Pan, represented by the eastern chimpanzee. These are also terrestrial knuckle walkers, but they also spend a lot more time in the trees, and they weigh significantly more than gibbons. They also are well known to use tools and have very, very large brains. So, what does that also mean? How does a gibbon beat this? Yeah, see, look at that. Gibbons have a much smaller hitbox. Hooray. Now, moving on to the final round against genus Homo. So, genus Homo are the currently only living terrestrial obligate bipeds, the only things that always walk on two legs. They also weigh around 130 to 200 pounds on average, and they also have long legs instead of long arms, and they are the world's best tool user and have an enormous brain. The dilemma now is that humans are considerably better at using tools and are the most adaptable primate. They can even climb in trees and could potentially grab a gibbon. Not that matters because they have access to guns and could shoot them. So how could a gibbon possibly beat a human? They don't have to. Humans beat themselves, as this study by the World Health Organization estimates that humans have a 4.4% depression rate for a variety of reasons. And the independent study of captive gibbons shows that they sometimes get depressed when they're alone, as they live in pairs a whole lot of the time. Now notice that these are captive gibbons that are being separated from everyone else. So, every reason that a gibbon has to be sad is specifically caused to humans, yet humans can be depressed for any number of reasons, therefore, boom. And with that, the gibbon is the winner. The gibbon has made it all the way up the phylogenetic tree. The gibbon is the king. Mr. Gibbon Wide. Thank you.